Hello, this is Craig Brailsford with RedChip Companies. Thank you for joining today's event with Avalon Advanced Materials, which trades on the OTCQB under the ticker AVLNF and on the Toronto Stock Exchange under the ticker AVL. Joining us today are Scott Monteith, President and CEO of Avalon, and Lorin Crenshaw, the CFO. We will begin with a brief presentation in a moment, and then we will open the event to your questions. Welcome to everyone joining us today on X, YouTube, LinkedIn, and other social media platforms. To submit your question, we invite you to join us on Zoom. Use the link provided. Once in Zoom, click the Q&A button at the bottom of your window and type your question into the text box. Before we begin, please allow me to read the Safe Harbor Statement. This call may contain forward-looking statements within the meaning of the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1995. All statements pertaining to future financial and/or operating results, along with other statements about the future expectations, beliefs, goals, plans, or prospects expressed by management, constitute forward-looking statements. Any statements that are not historical fact should also be considered forward-looking statements. Of course, forward-looking statements involve risks and uncertainties. Avalon, please go ahead.
Thank you, Craig, and thank you to everybody for attending our presentation. I'll start with some brief introductions to myself and Lorin. My name's Scott Monteith. I'm the president and CEO of Avalon. It's a company that's been in existence for roughly 30 years, historically as a junior miner. And my background blends to why the board brought me aboard. And the board brought me aboard to scale up the assets that my predecessors had accumulated over the years. And my background is as a 30-year entrepreneur and business owner. I've scaled up many businesses. I've scaled up businesses in biodiesel refining, in specialized refining equipment for the decarbonization of crackers in refineries. I've been in water treatment, plastics, steel laboratories, as well as software, to name a few. Lorin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, Lorin Crenshaw. Good evening, everyone. 30-year finance professional. I like to say 10 years on Wall Street, 20 years on Main Street. Spent 5 years actually on the other side of the table as an investor with Smith Barney's Large Cap Value Mutual Fund, and then 5 years with PGIM. We called it Prudential Capital then, providing debt financing to companies. Before I decided to move to the other side of the table, the last 20 years have been in a variety of roles in the critical minerals industrial space. Spent 10 years at Albemarle Corporation, progressing through a variety of roles, ultimately CFO of the lithium division, at a time when we were doing exactly what we're trying to do here, build greenfield and brownfield capacity, at that time in China, Australia, Chile, simultaneously. This is my third public company CFO role. Thrilled to be here after having been at Orion Engineered Carbons and Compass Minerals before. And that's a little bit about me.
Thanks, Lorin. So I'll get into a quick introduction, as succinct as possible, before we launch into a short PowerPoint presentation and trying to keep timing in mind. Avalon, historically a junior miner, has accumulated a number of assets in the critical mineral space. It's a company that today is focused on three main assets. The first asset is a joint venture that we created in 2023 with Sibelco, a private mining group out of Belgium. And Sibelco was brought on to help finance, build, and operate a petalite mine near Kenora, Ontario. Again, the joint venture is called Separations Rapid Limited. And Avalon owns a 40% stake in Separation Rapids. Our second asset is a joint venture platform called Lake Superior Lithium, Inc., Leslie for short. Leslie was the dream of my predecessor, Don Bubar, which will be one of the staple lithium hydroxide, lithium carbonate plants in Ontario and in Canada. Leslie owns a property in Thunder Bay. It's a unicorn of a property, which is fully equipped with infrastructure that's required to run a lithium hydroxide plant, a lithium hydroxide refinery. And the system we're using is a system invented and produced by Metso out of Finland. It's an off-the-shelf refinery that is currently being used in the USA by one of the automotive OEMs. It's a process that uses an alkaline chemistry to produce lithium hydroxide from raw materials, and the raw materials that we prefer are spodumene concentrate. We are a flexible feedstock mentality. In other words, we don't mind buying our feedstocks from the big material traders like Glencore and Hanwha. The longer term strategy is to source the spodumene from Ontario mines. There's unlimited spodumene resources all around Thunder Bay. And in the long term, we'll be able to utilize a small footprint to mine the spod, to refine the spodumene in Thunder Bay, and to utilize the spodumene in northeastern U.S. and southwestern Ontario. It's a very exciting project where using the alkaline process will not only be producing the lithium hydroxide slash carbonate, but we'll be producing analcime, which is a clean sand, basically, which can be blended into cement to produce green concrete. Green concrete is lighter and stronger than traditional concrete and has a smaller carbon footprint. We'll be using a joint venture model similar to Separation Rapids Limited, except we'll be partnering with big cement, big automotive OEM, government, and private sector financial institutions. The last asset on the list is Nechalacho, which is our most significant asset. It's a resource based in the Northwest Territories. I like to call it the ultimate grocery store for rare earths. It has 16 of 17 rare earth elements off the periodic table, as well as zirconium. It's a fully proven resource, with Avalon spending $100 million on a feasibility study years ago with SNC-Lavalin. And it provided data that really gave confidence to the company that we were sitting on a high grade, a variety of rare earths and zirconium that can be mined and refined in Canada and can be refined in the States. It's a project also that has many permits. We have a few more permits to apply and get issued, but we feel we're very close to the starting line to commence construction on a rare earth mine in the Northwest Territories. And again, Nechalacho is roughly 200 kilometers outside of Yellowknife. And lastly, we've been busy raising tactical financing in the last few months. We raised close to 19 million CAD a couple months ago, which gives us the ability to make strategic investments in people and studies. We've commenced a PEA on our Nechalacho site, which will lead into an updating of the feasibility study that was completed in about 2011. We've also recently announced the startup of a feasibility study on our Leslie project. That's the Lake Superior Lithium hydroxide refinery in Thunder Bay. And that announcement was made yesterday. And we've hired Nordman Consulting out of Thunder Bay to coordinate that study. The PEA that's being coordinated at Nechalacho is being run by Wood Consulting. Over to you, Lorin.
Sure. And so I'm going to start on slide 5. Thank you. And so investors often will ask us, how do we spend our time? And when you look at this slide, you should have a view that our time is being spent under asset 1 and 2, the rare earth asset largely, and the lithium asset. When you think about what is the future intrinsic value of this company, it's on that left side of the page. We're blessed to have all of these assets. But one of the things that attracted me to Avalon was the fact that it was very clear to me that we're not going to sit around and admire what you see on this page. We're going to advance the rare earth asset and the lithium asset, and these other assets you should consider to be largely, I would say, non-core, which then means, are there ways for us to monetize those so that we raise non-dilutive funding that will strengthen our balance sheet and allow us to grow this business and take it into production. The other thing I would zero in on here as an investor is the numbers with regard to the net present values. When you think about what is the value of Avalon and what is the opportunity, all of us believe that as we sit here with a market cap less than 100 million Canadian, and we're looking at a page with NPVs in the billions of dollars, we believe that the opportunity is to close that gap. And as an investor, the view is properly capitalize. What is the value of this company? And we're excited about the answer to that question. And that's what we wake up every morning trying to do, is to close that gap. We can move to slide 6. I like this slide because there's an old saying that you can have your own opinion, but you can't have your own facts. And this slide has a lot of facts on it. And so at a time when there's a lot of positive sentiment around rare earths and critical minerals, it's important to look at the facts. And when you think about the number of rare earths, there's frankly 4 that matter as far as driving in excess of 80% of the demand and the volumes for this business. And they're on this slide. And what this slide says is that our asset has heavies and lights, and it has the greatest percentage as a percentage of the actual rare earth oxides across all projects in North America that are under development or even in production. And so it also indicates that we're one of the few projects that has advanced to the feasibility study phase. Now, with the press release a couple of days ago, you will see that we were taking a step back, not on the resource, but really on the metallurgy and on the processing, to update that processing to an approach that matches today's standards that we think will be more environmentally friendly and drive a greater yield. And then we will advance to a refresh of the feasibility study. All of those things drive the intrinsic value and investors having confidence in the intrinsic value of this project. And so that's that chart, and I think it speaks for itself. Slide 7. Another question that we get from investors is, if all that is true, then why hasn't Nechalacho already been advanced? And the fact is, it was. We were approaching $1 billion market cap over a decade ago and had advanced at the cost of in excess of $100 million, a DFS, and we're on the verge of properly capitalizing this company. The very same asset that you can buy today for less than 100 million market cap is the one that you see on this page. And we are a case study in what I think the world is now waking up to, which is that left to its own devices, there are countries that dominate this space that will squelch and will seek to cause not to advance through lowering pricing assets like this. What's different now is that there was industrial policy that caused this to fail, not the actual geology. The geology hasn't changed. Today, thankfully, the industrial policy has changed. And we think that the time is now. And in our conversations with various potential partners, both at the government and this private sector level, we believe that the industrial policy has now aligned with the geology to allow us to capitalize this business. And so that's what we're going to try to do so that it becomes a source for the G7, frankly, North America, but I would say the G7 would benefit from this resource. Slide 8. What sometimes investors say is, well, I understand Nechalacho, the good Lord made that, and that's a fine asset, but you don't have a mine or a resource at lithium, and that is true. Our competitive advantage with lithium is the scarcity value of this site. And you can keep clicking through that slide so that the different elements come onto the slide. We have a view that Thunder Bay, just as Houston is the capital, the refining capital for North America for oil, there's no reason that Thunder Bay should not be the refining capital for spodumene in Canada. We should be at the center of a midstream refining cluster. Given the feedstock density, if you draw a circle around Thunder Bay, there's a ton of spodumene sources, given the infrastructure, given the policy dynamics and the demand. And so we're excited about the prospects of advancing phase one here and phases 2 and 3 over time. But we think of this as just as the Houston of refining will be that for spodumene, and we're very excited to advance that project. And then finally, if you flip to the next chart, actually one more, Scott has talked about the funding. At the end of the day, as an investor, you say, well, okay, this is kind of a hybrid deep value and growth play, which makes it very interesting. And you say, well, what's going to close the valuation disconnect? And we think there's 8 things. The ones in green have either been done or are well underway. And so Scott spoke to the management reset. We spoke a little bit to the governance reset in terms of adding directors with industry relevant experience. We successfully secured tactical capital, and now we're putting that capital to work in the last couple of press releases you've seen with regard to advancing in technical studies. So then what's next? Those studies validate the economics and facilitate discussions both with institutional equity investors as well as with government entities to validate these projects. And that we expect to allow for us to be successful at securing strategic funding, commercial enablement on lithium in terms of feedstock sources, which Scott mentioned, as well as offtake partners, and things like this. Diversifying the shareholder base. There's something to be said, especially for small market cap companies, with regard to just raising awareness. And I'm not one who's prone to just free commercials, but I would say that we've been quite pleased with the conversations that we've had in the past 60 days, having brought on Redshift. The quality of the dialogue and the discussions we had is going to allow us over time to continue to upgrade, lift our shareholder base towards not just institutions, but just family offices and buy and hold investors, and not hedge funds and funds that want to clip the warrants and sell the stock. It is what it is. Our goal is to upgrade our shareholder base over time, and that's important. And finally, non-core asset sales, which would be non-dilutive in terms of funding. And so that does it. We're excited and happy to take your questions.
Lorin, Scott, thank you very much for that excellent presentation. As Lorin said, we are now going to take your questions. To submit your question, we invite you to join us on Zoom. Use the link provided. Once in Zoom, click the Q&A button at the bottom of your window and type your question into the text box. We already have dozens of questions for you, gentlemen. First, have there been any expressions of interest from potential joint venture partners?
We're in active dialogue with quite a few joint venture partners, depending on which joint venture you're talking about. But yes, we are in active discussions. We don't have any MOUs or LOIs yet, but we're expecting to progress down that path with a number of the joint venture partners in the coming months and year.
And I would add that with these feasibility studies validating the economics, what you ultimately get out of that is a net present value. And so if you're in conversation about some sort of a partnership or equity stake at an asset level, one of the documents that's pretty important is that everyone is in agreement with the intrinsic value of either of those assets. And so we're thrilled to be moving these forward because they facilitate those discussions.
Yes, and one really important reason why we don't have an LOI or MOU in hand yet from the private sector is because everybody's waiting for a government commitment, whether it's the US government or whether it's the Canadian government, provincial or federal. The reality is government investment in lithium hydroxide refining and in rare earth mining and processing, it's never really been done in Canada before. And bringing government financing into place, whether it be equity and or debt, stabilizes the risk of the asset of the investment, which then attracts Bay Street and Wall Street investors into the equation. And with the advent of government investment into projects like this, we anticipate floor pricing for the raw materials that we'll be producing. So it's important that we get government commitment into projects like this, which are really pioneering projects from a Western perspective.
Second question, can Nechalacho be fast-tracked using prior studies rather than restarting?
I would say that we're not really restarting from scratch. We are leveraging the feasibility study that was completed at Nechalacho close to 15 years ago. We are updating with a PEA and an updated feasibility study because we're now using different processing techniques. We're working in collaboration with an Ontario-based university professor to develop a caustic cracking mechanism for the zirconium molecule versus acidic, which will affect the feasibility study results. As well, we have to factor in inflation and FX impacts on the cost of the project. Lorin, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's exactly right. And so you should not have a view that this is a classic PEA. What the good Lord made is still there from 13 years ago. And so we are only doing this to update the processing aspects of this, not the underlying earth or what have you. And so that chart I shared earlier is what it is.
Yes.
But it is prudent for us to update it to reflect current realities, to have full confidence in our ability to move it forward.
Yeah, we're not sitting around waiting for just simply studies and thought. We're making investments in the field. We closed a large round of financing 2 months ago, 4 million of which will be deployed into new drilling at Nechalacho. We'll be conducting twin drilling procedures to verify all of the drill hole data that we collected 15 years ago. We are opening an office in Yellowknife, which will be staffing with engineers to oversee not just the drilling of the property, but work at Nechalacho, all driving towards the creation of a mine.
Next question. What are the primary barriers to advancing Nechalacho as quickly as possible?
I'll just start off quickly. It's really getting the government financial commitment, whether it's equity or debt, which will trigger, of course, the joint venture partners and financial capital partners that we've been talking to. We have many of the permits that we require to start construction on the mine. So we'll, of course, have to apply for a few more outstanding permits. That'll be something that we'll have to overcome. And then aligning with government and with Indigenous communities in the territory will also be a priority. And we feel very confident that all of those things can be achieved. Lorin?
What I would just say to an investor is that you should not have a view that we're waiting on one of those things to happen. We're working all angles every day. And I like music. I play the trumpet. And so I think about analogies around conductors. And I see the capital structure coming into play sort of together. And so when there is a government or other partnership domino to fall, because we have been in discussion, things come together as it is de-risked. And so we're working on all those aspects every day. And as we get to things that are worth disclosing, you'll hear about it.
Next question. Why is Avalon now assessing lithium hydroxide versus lithium carbonate when the 2024 PEA was oriented toward hydroxide?
The markets are subject to change. One minute hydroxide's the priority, the next minute carbonate's the priority. The good news is that the Metso process that we will be constructing in Thunder Bay is equipped with processes that can produce both materials, just simply with the toggle of a switch. So we're very happy that to have optionality at the site, and it's nice to have choice, but we'll be able to produce both battery grade lithium hydroxide and lithium carbonate, as well as the byproduct analyte. Lorin?
No, that's exactly right. And I think when we did that report in 2024, the market outlook was sort of dominated by high nickel EV chemistries. Now, when you think about battery energy storage and just the direction of the trend in battery chemistries, it would just be completely prudent for us to reassess that and do the right thing.
What are the key terms of the licensing agreement with Metso?
Really the key terms is enabling us to utilize their technology. They'll act as an engineering partner. They've already operated as a scale-up demonstration partner. We actually shipped spodumene concentrate over to Finland from Brazil 2 months ago, where we ran the concentrate through their PDS, their process demonstration system, and produced battery-grade lithium hydroxide on site and analyte, both of which were shipped back to Canada. The lithium hydroxide is packaged up safely, and the analyte is being tested at Toronto Metropolitan University, and it's being tested at one of the big cement labs here in Toronto. Not to mention the fact that they'll be manufacturing and shipping the components to our site as we procure them in constructing the refinery. Lorin?
No, I have nothing to add.
How does the company plan to transition the technology into production and revenue?
This is not an unknown science. It's a proven system. It's off-the-shelf components. This is engineering and construction. And I built refineries that were unproven, and we built them successfully. And part of the key to building these things successfully are the teams that we construct to make a success of these companies. And again, I come from a refining background as well as a bunch of other things. But we're a chemically focused company. We're not a mining focused company with regards to the Leslie facility. We will be building a lithium hydroxide refining team from scratch. It'll have its own board and it'll have its own group of shareholders. And with regards to the Nechalacho site, it will be a site that houses the mine. We'll be building a mine on site in partnership with Big Mining. We'll be building a processing facility on site as our plan in collaboration with Big Processing, utilizing the eco-friendly technology that we developed with the Ontario University that we're working with. And again, we'll be bringing in the people from complementary industries to run these businesses. So that's sort of as a high level view of how we're going to make this transition the technology into production and revenue. Lorin?
Nope, nothing to add.
Thanks, gentlemen. Next question. Is the process economically scalable?
I'll start
Scott, let me take that.
I'll start with a yes, and then I was going to hand the mic over to Lorin.
So we did a 2024 PEA with this technology in mind, and that's why you go through these feasibility studies. And so we're excited about being able to advance that PEA towards a feasibility study. And that question is precisely what that document is meant to answer. I would say, without naming names, we believe that this technology is in use at a refinery plant that's coming online in America, and that'll be a test in terms of its scalability. But in the meantime, we'll be advancing this feasibility study. And we fully expect that it will be scalable and the economics will be attractive.
Next question. What barriers remain to advancing processing plants, including Thunder Bay discussions?
I'll start with Thunder Bay, Leslie. We don't look at them as barriers. We look at them as gates. So completing the feasibility study is important. We expect to have that completed in the coming year and a bit. Securing the spodumene feedstock source through a binding source agreement. We're in discussions with, global materials companies. We don't look at that as an insurmountable gate. We also plan on signing binding offtake agreements with the very same companies. And then financing and sort of the biggest domino to fall will be the government commitment. And we really are excited about the opportunity to bring government money in from an equity perspective and, of course, from a debt perspective. And not just traditional commercial forms of debt, but equipment financing, through various government financing groups such as EDC, Finvera, and JAGNOC out of Japan. Anything to add to that, Lorin?
No.
Next question. How are investors being vetted to avoid unproductive capital or reputational risk?
I think that's a great question. And I distinguish between tactical funds, like the ones we raised in October, and what I would call strategic funds. And you should have a view that we are looking to continue to level up and upgrade our shareholder base over time so that we're talking about nine-figure type of investments at the asset level with strategics who bring more than money to the table. And so the way you do that is in a regimented way, not do it yourself. You should have a view that we would be thinking about engaging the proper investment bank to create the appropriate competitive tension that allows you to have leverage and allows you to attract the most attractive strategic co-investors as well as strategics. And so time will tell, and we are on the same side as that person who asked that question in the view of continuing to upgrade the investor base.
Next question. Have there been discussions with governments regarding equity or investment?
From my end, the answer is yes. We've had many, many discussions with government, equity and debt investors in Washington, in Ottawa, and at Queen's Park in Ontario. We do have grant application discussions. We are talking about loan guarantees, infrastructure support, and permitting support, not to mention a feasibility study financial support. So we're talking pretty much about the whole puzzle, all of the pieces of the puzzle with financing with regards to these projects, as there's such large scale capital capital projects. Lorin?
Yeah, no, we have we continue to do what we can do to educate with regard to how important it can be for governments to play a role in crowding in capital without crowding it out. And that's a delicate balance and something that we continue to, as we have opportunity, to discuss.
Next question. Have there been discussions with rare earth processors?
Yes. Yes, we're talking to several processors in the US. We are talking to processors in Saskatchewan. There's a rare earth facility being constructed there. And of course, we're laying plans to construct an on-site rare earth processing facility at Nechalacho. And we do have the experience, we have the research, and we have the people to make a reality of a processor on-site at Nechalacho. And ideally, it's a great strategy to build the processing plant on-site so you can avoid the adversities that would be otherwise in place shipping those raw materials distances on rail, whether it's radiation considerations or what have you. Having the processing facility on site would be great. Optionality is important though, and that's why we're talking to US processors and other processors in Canada. Lorin?
No, I think you hit it right on the hit.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next question, strategy, or what is the strategy to avoid repeated private placements and dilution?
So I'll talk to that from a high level perspective, then I'll hand it over to Lorin for more of a CFO approach to that answering that question. But in my world and in my desire, the bulk of the financing will take place at the joint venture level. Avalon Topco will be a shareholder in each of the joint ventures, and each of the joint ventures will be assembling their own capital stacks. Of course, we will need to leverage tactical capital raises at the Topco to keep the ball rolling. But the big chunks of investment we expect to fall into the joint ventures. Lorin?
No, I think that's exactly right. And I think investors who own our stock or considering owning it should know that our aspiration is not to be a junior mining company. It is to be a fully scaled, cash flowing, critical minerals company. We are a growth company, and that will require capital, but done properly. To the extent that you raise capital at the asset level, it crystallizes value. To the extent that you have partners who come in, it implies an intrinsic value that if you look at instances where that has happened in the past, although you're raising capital, because it is strategic and because it implies an intrinsic value, oftentimes the shares will respond quite favorably because investors start to give you credit that they're not giving you today because they're not sure that what you're saying is going to happen. So I would say, so long as we are raising capital at higher and higher valuations with folks who bring capital, but also strategic perspective and resources, I think that it'll be an interesting and a fun evolution. But we are a growth company, and it's just a matter of doing that in a thoughtful way.
Next question, is the Nechalacho PEA being tailored for defense/national security, and are offtakes being explored?
Whether it's part of the PEA or not, we are talking to defense. We're talking to DOW in Washington. We're talking to the Ministry of Defense in Ottawa. Of course, materials coming out of Nechalacho are critical to the defense industries. We are talking about offtakes with various groups, including magnet manufacturers in North America, automotive, communication, and of course, with regards to zirconium, we are talking to folks that are in the coating of the power rods for the U.S. nuclear fleets. And of course, we're going to be talking to the nuclear power plant construction companies and procurement companies, as it's a critical material for nuclear energy production. Lorin?
I would just add, obviously, as discussions actually advance towards something more like binding agreements, as a public company, you would expect that you would hear that in the form of a press release. And so I would underscore that the question was around discussions, and Scott's answer is right on target. And obviously, to the extent that those advance, then you would know about it.
Regarding the Lake Superior Lithium feasibility study started today, what is the current status of your CMIF and SIF government funding applications?
The applications at CMIF don't pertain to the feasibility study per se. There are other programs that we have applied to help us fund that study. Lorin, do you want to elaborate on that?
That's right. There are programs that we have applied to that, if we're successful, would be very helpful with regard to funding what you've seen in the form of these press releases in recent days. I would say that CMIF was very helpful with regard to proving out the ANOSIGN, and that's what it did, and that was very, very helpful. And I would also say, as we consider this feasibility study, the revenue associated with ANOSIGN wasn't included in the 2024 economic study. So when I saw that, I was happy because that means that there would be upside to the extent that we get comfortable with that Amazon process and can layer in that revenue. That'll make our returns even better. But that's all there is to say about that.
And speaking of revenue, it's important to highlight the fact that as part of the feasibility study, we'll be including the solar panel farm that we'll be deploying, constructing and operating on the Thunder Bay site that we own. On site, we have a large tract of land that has a landfill beneath it where we can't construct structures on top of it. It's about 80 to 100 acres. But we do look at that area as a potentially productive area for solar panels. And I think, we believe that the solar panel farm can be constructed and made operational, well before the lithium hydroxide refinery will be operational. So that will be a source of revenue for the company, which is exciting.
With Wood Canada updating the Nechalacho PEA, are you actively engaged with the U.S. Department of War or strategic defense partners to monetize the magnetic rare earth assets this year?
Let me just say, I think that we have answered that question with regard to discussions. I don't want us to talk too much about discussions. And so I think we've answered that question.
Final question, gentlemen. The current market cap is significantly below the project's NPV. Beyond the 2027 feasibility study timeline, what are the specific de-risking milestones for 2026 that will help the market bridge this valuation gap?
I'll start off quickly with the main domino to fall, and that is, getting government commitments to financing these projects. These are first of a kind projects in Canada, and probably throughout most of the Western world. And again, bringing in the government financing, stabilizing the risk, providing floor pricing for the materials that we'll be producing, will be really essential to attract the private capital from Wall Street and Bay Street. Lorin?
Yeah, I would say, I think valuation is sort of like a mosaic, and it's not just one thing. It's a combination of factors that then you look up one day and you say, wow, that all came together. And so I would say 6 months from now, we project that the Nechalacho PEA will be complete, and then you would expect that we would provide some perspective there. That would be the first time that folks have had refreshed economic numbers on what is North America's most attractive asset in 13 years. So I think that that'll be a very important update when it happens in the coming months. And to say that there are things that we can release around the lithium feasibility study without being premature, then we might do that. But as I said in the slide, we are in discussions both with regard to public and private sources of funding. We are in discussions with regard to commercial enablement for lithium, whether it be feedstock or offtake agreements, and non-core asset sales. So those are the ways to win, and that's what we're focused on.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. For more information on Avalon Advanced Materials, reach us at 1-800-REDCHIP or email us at avlnf@redchip.com. Please visit the information page created by RedChip for Avalon. It's avlnfinfo.com. There you can view and download the investor presentation and fact sheet and register for news alerts on Avalon. Watch Small Stocks, Big Money, RedChip's program featuring exciting small cap companies every Saturday night at 7 p.m. Eastern on Bloomberg USA. And finally, join RedChip's next webinar with Xortex Therapeutics tomorrow, Wednesday, January 21st at 4:15 p.m. Eastern. Register for all RedChip webinars at redchip.com/events. Thanks again to our many participants today. And thank you, Scott and Lorin.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, everybody.